Hello, this is Dr. Grande. Today's question is, can I analyze the case of Cristian Dominguez-Aguilar? Just a reminder, I'm not diagnosing anybody in this video, only speculating about what could be happening in a situation like this. If you enjoyed this video, please like it, subscribe to my channel, and consider supporting me on Patreon. I will put the link to Patreon in the description for this video. First, I'll look at the background of this case, move to the timeline of the crime, then offer my analysis. In 2016, Cristian Dominguez-Aguilar moved from Mexico to Fontana, California. He was described as hardworking and friendly. After graduating from A.B. Miller High School, Cristian found a job in a warehouse about 20 minutes away in Colton, California. He was close to his brother Armando, who would sometimes pick him up from work at the warehouse. Now moving to the timeline of the crime. On November 22, 2017, Cristian's brother Armando sent him a text message sometime around 3 or 3:30 p.m. asking Cristian if he wanted a ride home from work. Cristian replied that he would be staying late at work that day. Armando went home and took a nap. When he woke up at 6 or 6:30 p.m., he saw a message from Cristian indicating that someone else was going to give him a ride home from the warehouse. When Cristian did not arrive home, Armando and his fiancée visited Cristian's employer and discovered from a security guard that no workers were there. What Armando did not know at the time was that at about 7:15 p.m., Cristian had been mortally wounded. He had been struck by a motor vehicle in the parking lot for a 7-Eleven convenience store on Foothill Boulevard in Fontana. He died from his injuries after being transported to a hospital. The vehicle that hit him was a white 2003 Chevy Silverado pickup truck, registered to a 20-year-old man named John Nieto. Here's what the police found during their investigation. Through examining video surveillance and speaking to witnesses, the police were able to form an image of what happened. A woman in a gray Infiniti G35 dropped Cristian off at the 7-Eleven convenience store. They later identified the woman as 20-year-old Elizabeth Mancilla. She was a co-worker of Cristian and had been romantically involved with John Nieto. She may have been currently involved with him, it's not clear. Elizabeth and John had a child together. The Infiniti G35 was registered in John's name, so not only the pickup truck, but also the Infiniti. As Cristian was being dropped off, a white Chevy pickup truck can be seen pulling in to a parking lot across the street. This was the same truck that would later hit him. After exiting the Infiniti G35, Cristian walked away from the 7-Eleven parking lot. The white pickup truck pulled out of the parking lot across the street and drove in the same direction that Cristian was walking. At this time, the headlights of the pickup truck were not activated, even though it was dark outside. The truck drove toward Cristian and attempted to run him over as he was crossing a crosswalk, but it missed him. The truck can then be seen pulling into the 7-Eleven parking lot and turning its headlights on. It turned around in the parking lot and drove away quickly. At this point, Cristian ran back toward the 7-Eleven convenience store as the pickup truck pursued him. The truck drove directly toward Cristian, slammed into him, and collided with the corner of the 7-Eleven convenience store building. Cristian was mortally wounded in the collision and was on the ground. The driver of the pickup truck ran away on foot, turned around, went back to the truck, presumably to get something like the keys, then ran away heading north. The woman driving the gray Infiniti, Elizabeth, can be seen walking up to the scene of the collision. She briefly ran in the same direction as the pickup truck driver before returning to the scene, looking at Cristian, then walking back to the Infiniti G35 and driving away. Considering that both the Chevy Silverado and the Infiniti G35 were registered to John Nieto, and Elizabeth was his former girlfriend or current girlfriend, the police decided to arrest both of them. For some reason, John agreed to talk to the police without an attorney. He admitted that he was the driver of the truck that had slammed into Cristian. Here's how John explained his behavior to the police. John believed that Elizabeth, who he called his baby mama, was cheating on him. He said that she hurt him in a way. He warned her to stop texting other men, but she texted Cristian. John spoke to Cristian on the phone and warned him he was going to get himself into problems. John claimed that he had a feeling that Elizabeth was going to drop Cristian off after work. In order to catch her in the act, John parked in the parking lot across from the 7-Eleven and watched. After seeing Cristian exit the Infiniti G35 driven by Elizabeth, John Nieto decided to run his truck into him. John confessed to everything. At this point, John didn't know for certain that the victim was dead. The officer went through various scenarios with John regarding his victim's condition. Something to the effect of, what if I told you Cristian was injured? What if I told you his legs were broken? John responded to each scenario. The officer then said to John, what if I told you he was dead? John replied, well, I mean blank. He's dead. He's dead. That's how I feel. The officer then informed John that the victim was in fact dead. John replied, I still don't care. The police also interviewed Elizabeth. She admitted that she picked up John after the fatal attack and took him home. The police could not find any evidence that Elizabeth had anything to do with the murder. In 2020, John was convicted of first-degree murder and sentenced to 25 years to life in prison. He will be eligible for parole in 2037. Also in 2020, Elizabeth was convicted of being an accessory to a felony and sentenced to 150 days in jail. Now moving to my analysis. Here are my thoughts in a few areas that stood out to me in this case. Item number 1. John's motive for committing homicide was his suspicion that Elizabeth was having some type of romantic contact with Cristian. In reality, this was not happening. There was no cheating going on. Elizabeth was just giving Cristian a ride home from work. John killed an innocent man and condemned himself to life in prison for absolutely no reason. Item number 2. The relationship between John and Elizabeth is a bit of a mystery. They had a child together, but it's not clear if they were currently romantically involved. It's one thing to be jealous of the activity of a romantic partner, but if John and Elizabeth were not even together, why was John so jealous? Who or what was he fighting for? Individuals who have a tendency to become jealous often have this feeling even if the romantic interest is not current. They don't always appear to understand how a relationship can be over. Over time, they simply collect more and more people to become jealous about as their list of past romantic partners increases. Item number 3 is the irrational behavior and rage of John Nieto. John ran down his victim in full view of witnesses and in range of surveillance cameras. He used a truck registered in his name and was so eager to slam into Cristian that he ran his truck into the corner of a building. This disabled the vehicle, which guaranteed John's arrest and conviction. Giving into his impulsivity and committing murder may have temporarily left John feeling satisfied and justified, but I imagine after a few decades in prison, he will not look upon his lack of impulse control as favorable. When John confessed to the police, he had a smirk on his face and appeared to be quite proud of himself. He wanted to play like he was a tough guy. He was defending his honor. He didn't care if he murdered someone. This too will probably seem unwise after residing in a prison cell for many years. John attempted to satisfy a temporary and irrational desire by making a decision that had permanent consequences. Even if John doesn't care about his victim's life, he threw away his own life at the age of 20. At some point, self-pity will probably overtake him if it has not already. Item number 4 is the behavior of Elizabeth Mancilla. Some people believe that she escaped justice. Others believe that she should not have been punished at all. Typically, I'm not a big fan of people being prosecuted for a lower-level crime related to a major crime unexpectedly committed by someone they knew. However, in this case, the level of callousness displayed by Elizabeth warranted some type of punishment. Elizabeth should not have rendered aid to Cristian's killer. It may say something about the relationship between John and Elizabeth that she felt comfortable rendering aid to him. She knew that he just killed somebody, yet did not appear to be worried about her own safety. This makes it seem as though Elizabeth was in the habit of playing the role of the damage control technician in the relationship, like she was there to keep John out of trouble, to placate his fits of rage. He would act out, and she would try to clean up the mess. They may have had some type of toxic, codependent relationship. Item number 5 is the terror that Cristian must have been experiencing during the attack. When he was walking away from the 7-Eleven store after being dropped off, he did not appear to be looking around or in distress. He was simply walking home, and here this man in a truck starts chasing him down. Some people wonder why Cristian didn't run somewhere relatively safe, like behind a utility pole, in between buildings, or somewhere like that. I think Cristian was simply taken by surprise. He didn't know what was going on. People sometimes have an idea in their mind about what they would do in a crisis situation. For example, as they're walking, they might be looking at places to run if they were robbed or if a dog chased them, but nobody expects a motor vehicle to run over them intentionally. This is something that people usually think of in the context of one vehicle against another, like a road rage style attack on a highway. But a vehicle trying to run over a pedestrian is pretty rare. John selected a very unusual homicidal method, which traded any chance of getting away for a massive element of surprise. Item number 6 is the nature of jealousy. The feeling of jealousy is fairly common. It only leads to violence rarely, but clearly sometimes it can be dangerous. There are a few warning signs that a person who is jealous may become violent. For example, they have impulse control problems. They are not satisfied by reasonable attempts to reassure them that there is no reason to be jealous. They attempt to dominate their romantic partner completely, like they are always trying to gain control. The jealousy co-occurs with a personality disorder, depression, or substance use. They refuse to accept when a relationship is over and continue being jealous in the absence of the relationship. And they tend to focus on an unlikely romantic rival or many romantic rivals, like they tend to see everyone as a threat. Now moving to my final thoughts. One of the most disturbing outcomes from jealousy between romantic partners is when it results in violence against someone who has nothing to do with the relationship. Cristian had no idea that he was in danger. One moment he was walking home, the next moment he was running for his life from an impulsive and sadistic perpetrator. Those are my thoughts in the case of Cristian Dominguez-Aguilar. Please put any opinions and thoughts in the comment section. They always generate an interesting dialogue. As always, I hope you found my analysis of this topic to be informative. Thanks for watching.